The other issue with having sex to get it out of the way is we typically get resentful. Hello, and welcome to episode 17. We're going to get into healthy sexual boundaries. And I'm just feeling a little excited about life and podcasting. Excited to talk to you guys today. I want to do a shout out to my podcast manager and audio editor, Eloisa. She just did an audit for me, and you guys, the show is growing. It's so exciting. So thank you for sharing it, and it's been great to see more of you guys joining the Facebook group. The link to that's in the show notes. It's free if you want to come join it. But yeah, I'm just excited for the community to grow. It's one of those things where it's you put yourself out there and you're like, oh, this is a little vulnerable. When the podcast launched, I was like, oh my God, this is my baby. Are people going to think it's ugly or will they think it's cute? And so people think my podcast baby is cute, and I feel very happy about it. So thank you all. And that actually brings us to a new tiny little segment we're going to do at the beginning of each show. We're going to feature a review of the week. So the review of the week for this week says, great new show. Heather is fun and informative. Can't wait to hear what she has to say next and bring it to the bedroom. And I love this because if you guys listen to my trailer, my goal is to make it fun and approachable, right? Sex is one of those, quote unquote taboo topics that, we're not supposed to talk about it. We're not supposed to say certain words with too much confidence or too loudly, or we shouldn't say them in front of certain people, or, it's all this kind of sketchy bad thing that just happens to be the reason we all exist. So anyways, I'm so glad that that's coming through, that people are feeling like it's fun and approachable. And then the last part, bring it to the bedroom. I want this to be practical. And I also had just a in-person conversation with someone else who listens to the show, and he was saying, yeah, let's kind of have some practical tips of how we can put some of this into use. So I'm going to start incorporating that too. But anyways, the reviews are really important because it helps the podcast to get in front of more people. And my whole mission in doing this is to spread this sex positive message. So really appreciate that. If you're on Apple Podcasts, all you do is go to the show page. You might have to go to the menu to go to the show page. Scroll down, tap the 5 stars, scroll down a tiny bit more, leave a couple sentences, and that's it. Shouldn't take you more than a minute if you're interested in doing that. It does help spread the word about these messages of sex positivity and being okay with yourself as a sexual being and knowing how to navigate sex and knowing how to have these conversations. So if that is something that you're about, the reviews are super appreciated. And they're so appreciated that if you hear your review featured, get in touch with me. You can email me at hello@heathershannon.co. You can DM me on Instagram. If you're in the Facebook group, you can DM me on Facebook. And we're actually going to give you a book bundle of some of my favorite sex books. So I have an Amazon storefront. I'll put that in the show notes too. And you can just pick, your top 3 favorite books from that list, and we will send them to you in the mail as a thank you for taking the time to leave the review. So without further ado, my friends, we're going to get into the sexual boundaries thing. And boundaries has come up quite a bit. My friend Jacqueline, shout out to Jacqueline too. I just feel like doing all the shout outs today. I think I just am feeling so grateful and connected to you guys as a community, and really we're in this together. But my friend Jacqueline went viral making some boundary videos. And then I also asked in my Facebook group for the podcast, what other types of topics would you guys like? And somebody mentioned sexual boundaries there. And it's definitely something that I work with my clients on. So let's get into it. I'm going to start by being a little vulnerable, demonstrating vulnerability and sharing a personal story. So, I'm someone who's dated a decent amount, and sometimes the guys that I'm dating are pretty respectful, and sometimes they're not as respectful. And so I think having had some of those experiences where it feels like someone's being sexually pushy, and, I addressed some of this in the consent episode as well, or someone's kind of pestering, or someone keeps trying something that I said no to. And it's they're not being, physically forcing something, but it's at some point it just stops being fun, right? It's this is no longer, sexy or romantic or hot or any of that. It's just kind of like, okay, and you've now killed the mood and I'm done. At least for me, that's my personal experience. And so I realized also what happens is we can get in our heads, right? And there can kind of be this guarded feeling because if you've, had an experience with someone trying to push things sexually and you're not really ready for it or not really wanting it in that moment for whatever reason, you can have this guardedness. And so I realized that I was on a second date with someone who wound up being my boyfriend. And I just decided to say, hey, can we just kind of draw the line here tonight so that I can just kind of be relaxed and fully present with you and like fully enjoying it and not kind of have my guard up wondering if you're going to like try to push something further. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, we could totally do that. And I think that does a couple things. Like it shows that, I care about myself, kind of demonstrates high self-worth in that way. So it made me feel good about myself. It's like, hey, you know what? I'm showing up for myself. This is maybe slightly uncomfortable to say, but I'm going to say it anyways because my well-being, my presence, my relaxation matters to me. So it sends you that message to yourself. So that's maybe even the most important reason to be able to set some boundaries. The second thing it did was to help me see, how does this guy that I'm really just getting to know, how does he handle it? Can he take a boundary? Can he take a no well? Is his ego strong enough that he's not going to go have like a hissy fit or start pouting or get all defensive or, yell at me or anything like that? And so he did. He had a great reaction to it. And then it also can create a sense of safety. And I think this is something that not everyone realizes. So like if you're with someone new and you want to be intimate with them, sometimes the fastest path to that is by slowing down initially, because then it creates this sense of safety. When you respect boundaries, when you communicate boundaries, when you are honoring and trying to understand that other person's experience and helping them know like, hey, however you show up in this situation is okay, then they might be like, oh, well, let's go. So sometimes that happens, right? And don't be cool because you have an ulterior motive. Just be cool, right? But it'll wind up working out to your benefit. Okay, so a couple topics I want to get into with the boundaries. First one is using sex for validation or having sex early on so that it's kind of not an issue and you almost just get it out of the way for the other person. The first one, using sex for validation, I think is really interesting because I surveyed my Instagram on this. 80% of people say that they have used sex for validation. Like, wow, that's a lot. This is like a main way in which a lot of us are trying to get validated in how attractive we are and how sexy we are and how desirable we are. And like, who doesn't like to feel wanted? But what I want people to think about, is this coming from a place of, hey, this is just fun and like this feels great? Or is this coming from a needier place of, because I'm not feeling attractive, I'm not feeling sexy, I've got some real shitty self-talk going on in my head about, the weight that I need to lose or how I should be gaining more muscle or how, I should have better moves in the bedroom or how I didn't really have a lot of sexual experience before my current partner. And so I feel like I don't know what I'm doing and I don't even know like how to learn or how to build that confidence. But if this person wants to have sex with me, then I might be doing something okay, right? And so part of it's the shitty self-talk, and that's, something we really need to work on. And then part of it is also, how are we showing up for ourselves? How are we taking care of ourselves? Because the way we show up in terms of even allowing ourselves not to know, allowing ourselves not to be an expert at sex, I actually think that's like a superpower. It might sound weird, but I actually think that's kind of a superpower when it comes to sex. If you can just accept and be where you're at and let that be okay. It's almost like if you're smart, like in a classroom or something, you're not as afraid to ask questions because you're smart. Whereas if you're kind of questioning if you're smart, you might be afraid to ask questions because like, uh-oh, people might know I don't know this thing and they might think I'm dumb. And I kind of think maybe I'm dumb sometimes. So do you see what I'm saying there? Just assume you're good enough at sex. And then that allows you to be a beginner at certain things or to say, hey, I want to get better at this, or hey, let's do more of that. And it could be, hey, I kind of want my clitoris touched a different way. Let's communicate about it. Or hey, you have never been that into hand jobs, but what if we like try to do some things a little bit of a different way? Let's experiment. Or it could even be, let's incorporate more foreplay. Like, what does it look like to bring in some, massage oils, or even to do, I'm going to get into some of this in detail at the end for your homeworks, to do a body scan, to just kind of get into our bodies, get out of our heads, leave the day behind us before sex. So bringing up some of these ideas is a bit vulnerable, but when we can have that confidence within and we're not needing kind of this other person wanting us in the sex for validation, it really frees things up. The second one I wanted to get into, and these are kind of on the side of maybe having more sex than what's healthy for you, or saying yes when it's not truly a clear yes. So having sex early on so that it's not an issue, it doesn't become an issue, doesn't get made into like a big deal, and you're almost just getting it out of the way. And so what's happening here is you're abandoning yourself. And I'm just going to be like very honest with you guys. I'm not like sugarcoating this. You're abandoning yourself in favor of the other person. So you're kind of thinking, this other person might feel like I'm being a tease, or this other person might feel like, they're not getting their sexual needs met. And so then they're going to leave me. Right. And we're so afraid of being left, or the other person being uncomfortable, and then kind of having to like sit there with the other person being uncomfortable, which makes us uncomfortable. And so when we're not as afraid of those emotions, and when we can feel our own feelings, and when we can just be like so cool with ourselves that like if the other person is kind of like, maybe this isn't for me, that we're like, okay, cool. Like, then you're not for me. I understand it's a little bit more difficult if you're like married to the person for 20 years and have, a commitment and a whole life together. But I mean, these issues come up whether you're single or in a super long-term relationship. We can still be looking to this other person for validation, and we can still be having sex just to get it out of the way. The other issue with having sex to get it out of the way is we typically get resentful at some point, right? And then that can kind of tank our libido. Then we're kind of just, almost like have an aversion to sex at some point. And then our partner's kind of like, okay, well, now I just kind of feel rejected and I don't feel very connected to you. And this is like not, or when we do have sex, you're like not really into it at all because you're kind of just doing it as a performance or doing it as an obligation, right? And so it winds up creating a disconnect anyways, is what I see in practice. So what's the solution? Do some inner work. I had the recent episode about self-love is annoying. So I do want to kind of say there's a dual approach to it. You can do the work from the inside out, and you can also do the work from the outside in. And I have a guest coming up next week where that's going to be the main theme of actually doing the work from the outside in. So there's not a right or wrong way to approach this stuff. Obviously, I think working with a coach or a therapist on this is a great way to go to get a little bit more personalized attention on it. But yeah, just realize how you're showing up. Do some of the thought models. I have another episode on the emotions of sex where I get into how to deal with this and what are some tools you can use. So go listen to that one if you haven't. If you have, do some thought work, do some parts work, right? Notice what's coming up inside of you. At the same time, do some work from the outside in. How can you feel confident about your appearance from the outside in? How can you show up for yourself in that way? Because I do really believe sometimes it takes having an experience to really integrate a new feeling, a new way of being, a new way of thinking, right? So maybe we go to the gym and we get a compliment, or maybe we have, we're stronger than we used to be, or more flexible and mobile than we used to be, or maybe we learn how to, communicate better. And all of that can increase our confidence so that we're not using sex for validation and we're not trying to do the people pleaser thing with someone else at our own expense. So really what's happening here is these issues are stemming from kind of a disconnect with your own body. So your body might be giving you a no. Your body might be kind of not really turned on at all, but I think this other person would like it. And like, I can just do it. Fine. Or, we're just kind of bulldozing. Like, nope, the brain is just going to dominate the body. And it's like, well, I've already decided this is just what we're doing. So body, you're coming along for the ride. And so it's really creating this, rift or disconnect like within ourselves, within the relationship between our mind and body. And that's a big deal. And I think our culture promotes this idea of, hustling and consistently, ignoring our body signals. I was talking to a friend recently about how she doesn't even get bathroom breaks at like regular intervals because it's just like work, work, work. And I really want to help shift that part of the culture too. Like, what if we honor our body signals? What if we've evolved to have emotions because they're sending important messages to us, right? So let's just entertain that idea at least. And here's where I'm going to give you some concrete homework. The ability to tune into your body is so core to all of this that I'm talking about today, to know what an internal yes feels like and to know what an internal no feels like. So some ways you can practice would be, one, do a body scan. And so that's where you kind of, start at your toes and go up to your head or vice versa. And you just check in with each part of your body. It's like, okay, head, how are you feeling? Oh, maybe there's some tension there. Good to notice. And you're not necessarily trying to, immediately let go of the tension. There might be some that are more of a progressive muscle relaxation that do incorporate that, but that's not even necessary for this exercise. It's just the awareness. It's just the presence with your body and to start tuning in consciously to what's going on in your body and how it feels. Number 2 is going to be do a sensual massage with your partner and notice where you feel relaxed, if you feel self-conscious, or if you feel squeamish, ticklish even, anywhere. So you might notice just moments where you feel that way that maybe pass. And you might notice certain body parts where you feel more relaxed or more tense. And it's really kind of for you. And actually, it could also be a practice of setting the boundaries. So you might be like, you know what? I would love a massage, but please avoid this area and that area. Please avoid my, upper back because it's super sensitive or spasms a lot, or please avoid my feet because I don't like feet, whatever it is for you. So I actually think that's a great, low stakes opportunity to practice the boundary setting. Plus it relaxes you. Plus it's connective without it having to be, all or nothing in terms of, we're not touching or we're having, intercourse. And then the last way that I would encourage you guys to practice is just by feeling your emotions in your body. And so a couple emotions that I think most people can relate to would be anxiety. So when I work with clients that are experiencing anxiety, or when I experience it myself, it tends to be in the chest or throat. And so there might be sort of a tight feeling, a constricted feeling. Sometimes it feels heavy. So see if that's something you can tune into. Another one that I think most of us can relate to is sort of the dread pit in your stomach. And so what I kind of want you to start noticing is that actually all emotions have physical sensation that goes along with it. And the more we can kind of get in our body with it and not just in our head about I'm anxious, I got to stop feeling anxious. It's what if I'm just present with the chest tightness or the throat constriction instead? Let's just see what happens for 3 minutes. What if I don't resist it? What if I don't fight it? And what if I also don't perpetuate it by having thoughts that are looping that keep making me feel more anxious? What if I'm just with the physical sensations in a mindful way where I'm not judging it, but I'm also not trying to escape it? I would love to hear from some of you if you do this, because our emotions tend to pass, our painful emotions tend to pass faster when we do that because we're acknowledging them. It's they're coming up for a reason. And sometimes we even get more intuitive guidance this way because I do think of our emotions as little messengers. So try it. I also wanted to mention the flip side of the boundary thing, where sometimes we're actually not being vulnerable enough. Sometimes we're having some, fear or aversion to sex, and it actually is a pretty safe space. And you actually are secure enough in yourself that you can handle it if something doesn't go perfectly. And so I want to mention also in those cases, push yourself a little bit. It's okay, right? We have defense mechanisms for all sorts of good reasons and different reasons, but kind of let that part of yourself that's feeling guarded or defended know, remind it, you're actually safe. Let's play this out, right? Doesn't go perfectly. You have this support and that support, or, your partner in this sexual experience is someone who's consistently been really safe for you. And so some of the work might also be, how can you be safe for yourself, right? So with that, I am offering you guys a fun little free gift as well. I have a healthy sexual boundaries checklist at my website. So you guys can check that out at heathershannon.co/freebies. Again, that's heathershannon.co/freebies. So I hope you guys enjoy that, and I will catch you next week.